All right, that sounds promising. Okay, so we're going to get cracking. So forgive me if I sound a little bit formal when I start the actual deck. That's just not me showing off. That's just so I can get something to hand over after we're done. Okay, let me just quickly kick this off from the beginning. No, didn't want to do that. Just going to share my screen. All right. Okay, we're good to go. So welcome to this webinar. My name's Alex Michael. I'm one of the systems engineers here at SonicWall. I'm probably pre-sales is probably more accurate. I deal with the sort of solution side of customers' requirements and that sort of thing, sales side. My background, I worked for I was an engineer for the majority of my career. Help desk, support desk, that sort of thing. Mostly for security and networking. So I've been with SonicWall for about, coming up to 3 years now. So we are going to crack on with this. So it's Capture Advanced Threat Protection Service. It's one of the newer tools in the arsenal that we have. I say new; it's been out for about a year now. The demand is increasing for layers of security. So this seems to be the correct fit, and yeah, let's crack on. Okay, right. So just a little bit of intro for those who aren't aware. The challenge is to deal with the zero-day threat. What is the zero-day threat? It's the viruses that there aren't actual definitions or signatures for yet in your security tools. Just a few stats there that come from the SonicWall threat report there from 2014 and 2015. The number of attack attempts. Just to give you an idea, I mean there's plenty of graphs out there that I could have shown, but just wanted to reflect the increase of what we're having to deal with. Certainly in my experience here, the conversations that I have with customers with security issues, typically most of the conversations I have start with, we were hit by ransomware recently, and we have to sort of deal with that. It's not just our customers. I'm sure most of our competitors have the same sort of thing. We'll get a little bit on that a little bit later. So why is it increasing? Well, they're becoming more sophisticated, as you would expect, really. So people have monetized the threat. So it's not just people just infecting machines and stealing a bit of data. They're using it as a way to make money, as unpleasant as it sounds, which makes it more appealing. So there are various types of ransomware out there. Just to specifically dwell on that for a second, and the purpose of sandboxing is to prevent that. There was a time when it was just Windows machines that were affected, I should say. I remember speaking to various Mac customers who say, "Oh, we have Macs, so therefore it doesn't affect us." That's not the case, and we're certainly seeing a lot of threats to mobile devices. In fact, if you look at the SonicWall threat report, which I'll post a link if you guys need it, the estimation is that it's going to affect more mobile devices, iOS and Android and so on. One of the challenges is that the infections, the viruses, the threats themselves, they don't just come over unencrypted. They come over encrypted as well. So we'll talk a little bit about how to deal with the encrypted connections. Unfortunately, with a lot of firewalls, if you don't have the means to decrypt encrypted traffic, then you're letting this traffic through, and you're relying on your endpoint antivirus to deal with it. And the purpose of the sandbox in particular is to have as many layers of security as possible to help prevent these things. To reduce the certainty. It's multiple file types, and it comes in different forms. It's not just a case of you have an exe sat as an email attachment. There's various file types, PDFs, Excel documents, Word documents, that sort of thing. Okay, so that's the challenge of what we are up against. So just to cover over that, the way of protecting against that is well, we sat down and had a think of what was needed. So a multi-layer threat analysis technology was what we needed. So technology that can cover those bases that we just mentioned, so that anything that was designed to avoid certain threats find it harder. Okay. We incorporated the fact that we can decrypt that traffic and scan it. The file types, which you already mentioned, being able to block those suspicious files from entering the network. The issue there, again, we'll come on to that shortly, is for the user to make a choice on how to deal with that, or the admin, we should say, on how to deal with blocking files. And there's a case-by-case scenario where, I've certainly seen that anyone who's using our sandboxing capture have different methods of dealing with those. And you want rapid deployment of the signatures across the network. So it's certainly a collaborative bit of technology, I guess. Anyone who's using capture, should they see something, or should someone try to send them a file and that we see and we analyze and we spot and then we block? Well, we create signatures for it and make sure that everyone's protected against it. Okay, so there's a benefit there. You're not just looking after yourself; you're looking after everyone else, and vice versa. Okay, so let's start talking about capture and what it actually is. Excuse me. The threat protection service, again, specifically to deal with the zero-day threats and the ransomware. It is multi-engine. That sits in the cloud. That little diagram there you're looking at, and I've got a more detailed diagram on the next slide. We see the traffic come in. We run it through our standard engine. So if you're an existing SonicWall customer, which I believe some of you are, if you have your security license enabled, the CGSS license, then you have those functionality in light blue. Okay. If it's encrypted, you can decrypt that traffic and run it through the various engines. At that point, if we don't know what the file is, if we don't have a signature for it, we then fire it off into the sandbox, which is in the cloud. So what's there in the cloud? So the grid network, which is what we call it, is the SonicWall service. Global Response Intelligence Defense is what it stands for. I should mention that first. And there we have our multi-engine sandbox, where we do our broad file analysis, and then we make the decision there whether to block the file, and then we deploy the signatures. Okay, and we also provide reporting alerts. And as we get to the end of this presentation, I've got a demo box up and running. So if you guys like, we can quickly jump onto that and show you how it's seen, and I can show you how to enable it on your units to trial it if you don't already have it. Okay. All right, so just a bit more detail on how it works. So up here is a typical user downloading a file from the internet. This orange rectangle here represents your firewall. So a request is made, a file is downloaded, and it has to come through the firewall since it's coming over the internet. Okay, so as mentioned, those are you go through the security services that you already have enabled. The middle two there are the security services that are part of CGSS. So intrusion prevention, gateway antivirus. If we've seen the virus before and you have a license box and the signature is on the box, well then you will block it at the perimeter and it's job done. But as we mentioned, it's 0 day specifically, it isn't always the case. You have the layer of SSL decryption in front, so that you can decrypt the traffic if the download is running over HTTPS, which is typically the case these days. Okay, and then after that, should having gone through these criteria and not being matched, you have capture, and that's when the file is sent over to the cloud. Can I just ask if there's any background noise? Can you just mute your phones if possible? Just we're actually recording this, so if that's okay, do you mind just flicking it on mute, and then we'll open it up a bit later. Cheers. Okay, so we then upload the file to the grid network. So here it goes into cloud. So what do? We store it in the database, and it's run through a pre-process before run through the multi-engine sandbox. So which are the engines that we're using? Well, there's our in-house SonicWall sandbox. We use LastLine. You may have heard of these, and we use VMray. There's a possibility that we'll expand on these and use more. That's it could well be that we'll have a few more tools. We need to make sure it's done efficiently so that it doesn't take too long to scan your file and run it through the analysis engine. We'll go a little bit through more how each one, what methods they use to make sure the file's clean. Once there's a verdict, that verdict is saved on my SonicWall portal. So as well as having been able to look at it on the file itself under Capture, sorry, 1 second, get rid of that, the hypocrisy of not switching things off. And then it runs it through the portal, and then you can refer to my SonicWall and see it and see it then. Okay, so then you can then look back and see historically what you've done. All right, just quickly. Okay, so as an admin, you will have access to the SonicWall portal and be able to check those files. So you can have a look at the history of what's gone through. It's an automated service, so I mean I have it running on my firewall here in my lab at home. I can bring up the firewall and I can go to hit it on the status page and I can see what the progress is. So whether the file is blocked or not, you can get a good idea of where the files come from and who's downloaded it. Okay, or you can set the logs to instantly email you and go and straight away you can react to that if needed. I mean, ideally at that point you would have stopped it and it's okay, but you could take further action. Okay, so back up to the grid network. The malicious files is stored on the grid network, and our threat research team will then set about creating a signature. Okay, assuming that it is actual threat. If it isn't, if it's a benign file with nothing there to worry about, then it's deleted from our database and it's no longer there. And so those signatures are fired down to your firewall. You'll see there'll be an update, and then at that point you are protected for further attacks. So there will be a hash of that file on your firewall, and if anyone tries to download that file again, it'll be blocked instantly, and you won't have it to deal with this sort of download. And at that point, if for everyone else who doesn't have Capture, so if you're not licensed for our sandboxing service, that signature will be merged into our normal antivirus definitions, and you'll get those within 48 hours. Yeah. So, and as I say, the capture means that you'll get it sort of fairly soonish. Although I couldn't tell you how soon. It's as soon as it's discovered, it's fired out to the capture licensed firewalls. Okay, and then going back to the admin, you can look at the firewall itself and then check the logs on there. So as well as looking at my SonicWall, you can look on the firewall itself. In fact, and again, I'll get to this in a bit. If you look at the status page on here, the SonicWall actually talks to the my SonicWall portal, which is stored up here, and get that information. Okay, so a little bit more about the analysis engines, and I mean there's a lot of gumph here, but I think the message here is that what efforts we're making to catch those possible infections. So I mentioned the engines there at the top, so we're using 3. As the file is uploaded to the grid network, it's not just done one after the other on a sort of conveyor belt process. The file is sent to all 3 and is analyzed at the same time. Okay, so I mean, here's the operating systems here, and on all the various applications it looked at. Any negative verdict from any engine will render the file as malicious, and then it will be stopped. Then you'll get returned a verdict of it's malicious and you're not allowed to download it, or you're still allowed to download it, but be aware that it's a bad file. And this is the form. Was it just a screenshot of the sort of the report that you get should you wish to click on the file on the file interface? And again, I'll try and go on that in a bit more detail shortly. So just a bit about what each engine is doing. Some of this stuff is beyond my capacity beyond my intelligence. So Sonic Sandbox does DLL injection. Last line, you run it as a guest and checks if anything's happening with these processes. VMRay, looks at the virtual address translation, modify KVM. I'm just reading these out at the moment, and those are various tools. So it looks if anything's trying to download the Windows Security Sender. Oops, excuse me. Whether the personal files are being changed, that's typical with ransomware, and if there's any sort of unwarranted modifications going on. Okay, like stealing FTP as well. That we've included that as a criteria for a malicious file. Okay, so at that point, sorry, just to peel back slightly. If the fact that we've got these multiple engines and the fact that we're doing hypervisor or full system emulation and virtualized sandbox, it's just covering as many bases as possible. We all know that there are no certainties when it comes to these sort of things. Well, we're attempting to cover all that. You could have multiple antiviruses running on your endpoint if you wanted to. The challenge still remains. The challenge still remains that there's going to be a gap somewhere. So, as many bases that you have covered, the better. A little bit about the file types. Office, PDF archives, and encrypted files. That all adds to it. It's interesting, actually. Just on a side note, when I first enabled it on mine, we're going back a while, when I was running it as a beta. I just left it to it, and then went about my business, and then a few days later, I checked back on the status, and I saw all the files that were being blocked. It's interesting stuff that the sort of files that were being downloaded that it was scanning. Certainly makes you feel safer, I guess. Okay, and worth mentioning, there's also a manual file submission. If you have Capture licensed on the screen on the firewall, there is a manual upload button. So, I mean, what's the benefit of that? Well, files don't necessarily always come over the perimeter, over the internet. Certainly, depending on the business that you're in, there is, you could walk in with a memory stick from a customer, or perhaps just a file that came in that has the files on them. Assuming that the file is not that virulent, that you plug it in and then it does its work, you can always take those files and manually upload it to Capture. I go ahead and give it a try. And for those SonicWall customers on this call, if you don't have Capture, you could certainly enable the trial for it, and then have a play. Upload a few files if you need, if you want, see it for yourself. One of the things that I did is, if you're familiar with it, if you go to icar.com, EICAR, they give you test file downloads, and as long as you haven't got other technology blocking it, you can always grab a couple of files from there and then fire it off to Capture just to see it caught. It won't run through the analysis. We've already seen that those archive files, and but we will take that file and attempt to have it scanned. Okay. Okay, so just a few of what it looks like. It's fairly simple to set up. It is one of the benefits of it. It's not pages and pages of configuration. It's pretty straightforward. We're just going to go through this in order. These are the protocols that are being scanned. Okay, so probably worth mentioning at this point, you have to have the antivirus enabled in order to do Capture. Since antivirus is essentially the pre-scan, make sure that there's nothing there that we do know about. So with a SonicWall, if you have a SonicWall, you will need the CGSS license bundle before you can have the Capture enabled. Okay, and you can see that there, and antivirus is enabled there. Okay, so with the inspected protocols, the challenge is with HTTPS, you require DPI SSL for that to be done. Again, if you have the CGSS license on your SonicWall, that's just a tick box, and you can enable it, and you get that done. Now, DPI SSL comes with its challenges. We're not going to spend too much time on that for this particular webinar. You will need to put certificates here and there to enable it to function correctly. But if you don't have DPI SSL, then you're only looking at the unencrypted files that are coming through it. That may or may not be enough for you in your environment. I don't know, but you want to use this to its capacity. We certainly recommend that you implement that. Okay, supported file type. So you can actually remove the files that you want scanned for analysis. So you can see it there if your picture's clear enough. Executables, PDFs, Office files, and archives, and all the zips there. By no means it's all of them. We are looking to add to that if needed. But again, these seems to be the files that we see, and we have the luxury of the more that Capture is used, and we have the stats to report on, and the sort of files that we have. We can implement other protocols, and our development teams can improve on that. Just as a side note, actually, late last night, a bit too late for me to sort of include that. This the slide into this presentation, we had some stats with the number of viruses that were caught. Now, I couldn't read off the numbers to you at the moment, but surprising how many viruses that we already knew about that we didn't have to analyze versus the number of files that were 0-day. It was a lot more than I thought. It's interesting how many of the files that we were looking at, we'd never seen it before from our SonicWall customers. Just something worth mentioning. Forgive me for not having those numbers. You just have to take my word for it at this point. Okay, the maximum file size limit, currently set at 10 meg. You can restrict it to smaller. Why would you do it? We certainly recommend that, as well as having all these boxes ticked, all these protocols enabled, that you have it set to the maximum. Well, ultimately, there's a bandwidth cost. If a file is being downloaded and then you are uploading it to the grid network, then there's going to be a bandwidth cost for that. In this day and age, I mean, I very rarely speak to a customer unless they have a satellite office sat out in the sticks. They're typically fast connections that should be able to cope with that sort of with a 10 meg upload. But you'd be surprised how often I speak to some that don't have anything great going on. We're looking to increase that. We're monitoring our data center load and all the stuff that's going through it. I can see that number increasing with time. Watch this space by all means. And then, importantly, just down here is the exclusion field. So for you SonicWall admins out there, you can create address book entries as you would when you're creating your firewall rules based on IP address and host address and MAC address and so on. You can set those in the rule in this little radio button here, and you can stop those files. So you don't want the stuff to be captured. So if you absolutely have a trusted network or a trusted location, perhaps you're in partnership with a service that you download files from daily. I'm just trying to think of an example. I can't think of an example. You can make it so that I trust this. I'm not going to make Capture send this file up to the cloud, and then I'll explain why that may be a good thing. Okay, so you've got two choices here. You can, at this point, you can actually, is there a screenshot for this? No. You can block until verdict, or you can continue to allow the download while we scan it in the background. Now that in itself sounds like it's self-defeating. Why would you want to do that? Okay, so well, the truth of the matter is that sometimes our users don't appreciate what's needed. They expect the system to run as they want it. They want those files downloaded, and if we're scanning it, well, quite frankly, that should have happened beforehand and so on. So again, I speak to different customers. Some of them have a trade-off. Some of them are very strict and have what I like to call full network paranoia. So they block until verdict. So what does that mean? Someone downloads that file. It's held at the gateway while it's sent to the cloud. If the user has a HTTPS download, then they will get a pop-up saying, please wait, we're downloading this file. We're analyzing this file, and then you're subject to the time it takes to do it. The time that we take to scan it varies. If we know about it, then it'll be obviously a lot quicker. I sent an executable from my desktop, which I knew wouldn't be seen. It's just a small installer. Was about 10 meg, and I had a verdict within a minute and a half, and that was a new file. That's just and that was an exe file. It could have been longer. I'm sure if it was encrypted, it will take a little bit longer. But will a user put up with that time where it says, please wait, we're scanning? Certainly other proxy technology out there where you download files, they give you the little bar that says, please wait while we scan this, So, that's the trade-off. Just a bit more about this blocking behavior. The block page is triggered if the user downloads and the file hash is on the firewall. So we know about that file hash is already there, and we know there's a malicious verdict returned to it. Okay, so if any of our sandboxing engines spot anything wrong with it, you're going to get a block page. And that point, and you can see the example of the download where the iCar download there. So there you go, stop to the border. We've already mentioned that. So whole file at gateway until verdict, and that will hopefully stop sort of any files, particularly the ransomware ones, from getting inside and being clicked on and so on. Just a little bit more about the signatures, if I haven't already mentioned it. The Capture subscribers will get the signatures immediately. So, I mean, there's a few people on this call now. I've certainly heard a few more join us since we started. If you've all got SonicWall, if you've all got Capture enabled, and only one of you downloads a file that is a malicious file, well, obviously it's going to be blocked for you anyway. That's the whole purpose of sandboxing. But for everyone else in the group here, once it's been analyzed and we've created the signature, as Capture subscribers, you are going to have that signature on your file. Sorry, the signature on your Capture. So at that point, if you download the same file, Capture will identify that without having to analyze it, and you'll be told that it's been blocked a lot quicker than that first 0-day customer. Okay, and then again, for everyone else, within 48 hours, your gateway antivirus subscriptions will have that definition. Job done. Well, I say job done. I personally am notified. There's a SonicWall team that deal with the signatures. I mean, I get an email every day about the new definitions that we create, and it's hundreds. It really is. There are some busy virus creators out there. Okay, so some of the tech benefits. Again, there's a lot of gumph here. I've included these should you be interested, but I think the main point here is that if your firewall has Capture enabled, we're doing very little extra work. I mean, I certainly know that customers are worried that their firewall will not cope with the additional cycles per second. Well, if you're sending the file to the cloud, well, apart from waiting, I mean, that in itself is an annoyance. Sending the file out to the cloud is where all the work is done. So, you don't have to worry about overheads on the processor. Okay? It doesn't interfere with the other security modules, and as I mentioned earlier, the benign files are deleted. As soon as it's scanned and they're benign, they're deleted. So there's no worry about your files there. Oh, as an aside, and I probably should have included it in this aligned in this presentation. I'm assuming that everyone on this call is UK based or perhaps European based. When you first set up Capture, you choose your data center. So there's a data center in Amsterdam and Frankfurt. Your files are kept on the shores of Europe. And that's relevant. I certainly get asked a lot that, if they're going to send some files, we need to make sure that they don't, head out into the US. And there's just some compliance ticking going on there. Okay. All right, let's talk about some limitations. Well, we already talked about the 10 meg file size. If you're familiar with our range of firewalls, it did start with the TZ500 all the way up to our supermassive range, and there's just an idea of how many concurrent scans you can do at any one time and how many files per hour. It's as of 627, which is our latest. It's our latest early release. By all means, check your mysonic.com. If you have your firewalls registered, you should be able to get a hold of that. Perhaps your partner looks after the firewall for you, like NetThreat. Get in touch. They are now support the earlier models for all you customers who have a TZ300 and 400. It's now available on those as well. It wasn't initially, but it is now. I'm running a TZ400 at home. I was always running it, but then again, I can be smug. I had a beta model. All right, so we're coming to the end, and here's some links here, and we will share this with you. The NetThreat guys will help with that. You can get these off our website. There's some videos how to set them up. Some of these are probably a lot more coherent than my explanation is, and I understand that. Just don't give me any negative feedback. I don't think my heart can take it, but there you go. And there's some knowledge-based articles about it and how to set it up. All right, so with that in mind, for the you who have kindly muted your phones, feel free to unmute and either yell at me and tell me I said something wrong or ask me any questions. Now is the time if anyone has any questions. Don't be shy. No? Anyone there? Anyone want to ask anything? I'm just trying to think. Yesterday I was asked about costs. By all means, get in touch with the guys at NetThreat, and they will be able to give you a quote. But the license itself, it comes in. If you have a SonicWall, which is just straight out of the factory with no security services enabled, you enable it with the AGSS mode. Okay, the AGSS, which is the Advanced Gateway Security Suite, it's everything that you get on the standard security suite that we used to that we still provide. That's there, but there's sandboxing and capture layered on top of it. So, but you know, we certainly recommend it, especially if you're having the sort of challenges. Unfortunately, a lot of times the customers who take capture do it as a reaction to a ransomware incident. That typically is what I see. You know, that's fine if you rather react to an issue like that, but you know, if you want to get ahead of the game, have it enabled from now. Okay, so it sounds like we don't have any sort of queries. We've come to the end about we're about halfway through.
Michael, Alex, sorry, I wouldn't mind asking a couple of questions.
Yeah, go for it. Who's that?
It's Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. Go ahead.
We've just been running the Capture APT on the trial as such.
Okay.
It's been interesting watching it. It's you know, it's scanned a reasonable amount of files, and I think it has. It's not found a massive amount, but it has found a couple of them, what were malicious files that hadn't been picked up previously. Okay. One of the questions I had, it seems to report on its scanning. It seems to be scanning things like Windows updates files and things like that. Does it automatically exclude? Do we have to set exclusions for the updates of other antivirus software, Windows updates, or are they automatically excluded from scanning of any files that go through Capture?
So it's interesting you should ask that. So I've mentioned that there should be an exclusion built in. So you can do those exclusions by BNS. But if you've been spotting Windows update files, that means you've had your DPI SSL enabled. Is that correct?
I did do it for a short while, but I've turned it off because I wasn't 100%. I did a little bit of a trial run with it, but I think I've turned it back off now.
The reason why I mention that, and that's a little bit outside of the capture screens that we showed you. In fact, I'll bring up the screen shortly. I should remember that. Under DPI SSL, the tick box that you have on a firewall. Let's just do that. Let's quickly just peel over here. So this is a firewall interface. I'll explain how you can get to this shortly. Under DPI SSL, and again, this is the one where you scan traffic that is encrypted. There are some exclusion categories.
Yes.
Sorry, no, this is there we go, the common name one. So Windows Update is there. So we won't scan Windows Update. Yeah.
Sorry, if I haven't got DPI SSL turned on at the minute, it won't be excluding those.
Well, if it's encrypted, we won't look at it anyway.
Won't look at those anyway, right? Got you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, if there are some Windows files, if it is unencrypted, forgive me for not knowing, but I'm not sure if it's download that you can make a HTTP download of all those files. Then yes, we will scan the file. But I take your point. That is something that's been kicked up to product management, that we should provide some exceptions for well-known sites. Windows updates being one of them. Yeah. As you can see, we have it on DPI SSL. But if like yourself, you're not enabling DPI SSL, and why would you do that? Well, you know, quite simply, you might have a firewall where you sized it not based on SSL decryption, and now you need it. But you know, especially with the sort of challenges we have today. So yeah, your point is taken. I will kick that back to product management, which makes this session just as useful for us as it does for you guys, hopefully. Was that the only question, Andrew? You said you had a couple.
Well, I think you sort of answered it. I sort of had a question on DPI SSL, but it's not really part of the subject today, so I think I'll save that for another day if that's all right.
Okay. Well, do you know what? We're hoping to do sort of these sessions fairly regular with the guys at NetThreat, who are, you know, kindly let me sort of bleat at you lot for a while. Perhaps I'll make that the next one. I mean, that in itself, I enjoy capture and sandboxing because of the simplicity. If I'm being honest, you know, even at 10 a.m. I'm not on all cylinders. But DPI SSL has a complexity which we always find a challenge, and it's not just us; it's all of our competitors. And you know, I'm sure you understand why. Essentially, we're performing a man-in-the-middle attack. You know, as the files come in, we decrypt it, we scan it, and then we re-encrypt it and forward it on. But perhaps I'll make our next show. So watch this space. You'll get to hear my voice again at some point. Before I ask if there's any more questions, let me talk a little bit about live demo. I know you guys, most of you guys have SonicWalls in your network, but should you wish to look at a unit that's in read-only mode, by all means connect to livedemo.sonicwall.com, and you connect to any one of these firewalls and have a look at how they function, fully licensed. Okay, this is what Capture looks like on the once you enable the license. I just want to show you the reporting screen, if I may, those settings that we've seen. So this box is sat in the cloud, and there are some test VMs sat behind it doing day-to-day stuff. So, there's a few files. There's 3 there, there's 2 there, there's 1 there. What happens is you can access your firewall and see this report every day. So I've got a similar dash on my home unit where I have some lab devices sat behind it. This information is stored in the cloud. So your file is now retrieving this information from the grid network, the SonicWall grid. But you can see the file types, who submitted it, that's the serial number of the firewall. So if any of you guys have more than one firewall, you can have a look at the serial there, the source IP and the destination IP. I was asked yesterday if we do that by username. So if your firewalls are allowing user access by username, would it list that here? At that point, you would need to, we show that in our logs, but you would need to sort of offer that into a logging tool like SonicWall Analyzer in order to retain that for a while. Whereas this data is here for a while, if you want to look at it in more detail, you do need to store that data off the box. Again, very similar for our competitors. I'm just going to click on a random file here. This one, obviously, they were all clean, but that's the sort of status you're looking at. Virus scanners passed, the reputation, any embedded code found, and a bit more gump there. It can be interesting. It might be something that appeals to the nerds more than anything. Forgive the term, but sometimes you need to forensically go back. I used to do contracting for a law firm, and they had some ransomware episodes. They were running a stateful firewall, so there's a lesson there, and they just had a proxy for URL filtering and email stuff. And they'll getting called by ransomware again and again, and they'll a bit flummoxed about why it was. Well, I mean, I suppose you could look at if you had something like Capture. Well, first of all, you would have blocked it anyway. But assuming it was going through because you didn't have the block until verdict option, they could have go back here and analyze it and try and work out where it's coming from, and maybe even block that website. As you know, the firewall has other security features like URL filtering, so I could have blocked that website. Or if it was an application, you could have blocked the application using the application awareness of the firewall. All right, so feel free to jump on live demo to have a look. If you do have a firewall with CGSS but don't have Capture, as Andrew just mentioned, you can enable the 30-day trial. Okay, so you just need to head over to System and Licenses, and from there you can enable the trial. Have a look at mysonicwall.com where your firewall is licensed, and you can certainly have a play with it for 30 days. I mean, yeah, within 30 days. I think it'll be interesting to see how many files it actually scanned and how many were infected, if any. Someone yesterday on a call sort of suggested that, well, their endpoint is up to date, and surely that's enough. It really isn't. It really isn't. It's layering is again the message of this webinar. You need to put as many layers in place as possible. Just one infection on a PC that has ransomware that you need to rebuild, that you need to allocate an engineer to look at. That in itself is it's time well spent if you're not having to do that. Okay, so that's me pretty much wrapped up. Is there anyone else who has a question? I see there's a handful of people on the call. Anyone else have anything to say? No? Okay, so I will end this session now. Thanks for your time. By all means, have a good Friday, have a good weekend, yeah, I hope this session was useful for you. So this is me signing off, I guess. Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.